I saw a Japanese in San Francisco once. He was small and looked like a monkey.
There are a lot of great anime out there, and a lot of great anime dubs, but not every great anime has a great dub. There are many factors that contribute to these outcomes, some of which we've gone over in other videos, but obviously there are more examples to talk about. So let's take a moment to go over some while also having a little bit of fun. Feel free to add your own suggestions in the comments, check our pinned comment for any corrections, and for those of you who wanted us to cover Cardcaptor Sakura, give us a little bit more time. That deserves its own video. But for now, these are 5 more anime that we'd like to have major or minor fixes in no particular order.
We're gonna start with a dub I don't even think is that bad, but it is missing one pretty major thing. The Ancient Magus Bride is a story about a Japanese girl, Chisei Hattori, who becomes the apprentice and fiancée of a skeleton-looking dude who happens to be a mage. In England. The UK? Britain? The UK? Village of the Year? Where does this take place again?
Shut it!
Yeah, that big thing the dub is missing are UK accents for all the characters from the UK, which is a lot. When looking at how much effort the rest of the production put into making the world feel truly immersive, authentic, and magical, I think it would have been great to hear that carried through in the accents too. Some folks might argue that hearing Magus Bride in American English is still more realistic than hearing it in Japanese, and I guess that's true. But maybe it being closer to the ideal further highlights the fact that it isn't fully ideal. This is of course assuming a dub with those accents is strong enough in other important departments. This isn't really a show like Arte, where, yeah, it would have been nice if they had Italian accents, but it works well enough with general American accents and the occasional Italian word thrown in, because there's an understanding that the characters aren't canonically speaking English. But in Magus Bride, they are.
That is a very British attitude.
Maybe this sticks out to me more because we see some real-world locations in the series, not just a fantasy world that has European influences. And while the Magus Bride dub that exists is fine, maybe there's some doubt as to whether an American studio like Funimation would have been able to give this dub good UK accents, especially given the quality of such accents in other American dubs. Funimation has had their actors do English accents before on shows like Negima, Black Butler, and even for characters like Elmer in Baccano.
Listen to me a moment!
Elmer!
Plus, one of their current actors, Kieran Strange, was raised in the UK himself, so his accent is natural.
That's so. I suppose you really are worthy to be the junior apprentice under me.
Princess Principal's dub tried this, and it was definitely ambitious. I don't know, maybe some people appreciate stuff like this. I think some UK accents are UK-ish enough to let viewers know that the characters are definitively English, but maybe not enough to fool people into thinking the accents are actually local. I'm Australian, so I don't really know what I'm supposed to think here.
This is no time to start speaking Australian, Jim!
Yeah.
I am kinda glad the Magus Bride dub actors used their normal accents instead of potentially botched ones, because that would put a damper on the genuinely emotional parts of the show, of which there are a lot. Though perhaps another reason why the Magus Bride team opted out from accents was because that same season in fall 2017, another anime called DS Ire was being simuldubbed by Funimation, and had several characters doing faux German accents.
It is our wish to accompany the General and the system however we can.
It looks like you're having a lot of fun out here. Do you mind if I join in?
Pardon me, do you think you could tell me which way to go to get to the church?
Anime dubs are very rarely outsourced to the UK nowadays, and we've discussed before why anime dubs tend to default to general American English. A lot of anime takes place in Japan and stars Japanese characters speaking Japanese, so if canonical Japanese dialogue were to be dubbed with a different accent or inconsistent accents, that might create a weird impression for listeners, as we'll get into in a later example today. It's an industry expectation that's been baked in over the years, and I personally don't have a definitive answer for this. I just know there are many great voice actors outside the US too, and in general I'd love to see more English dubs from the UK or even some other parts of the world too. For Magus Bride in particular, it isn't just normal RP English I want to hear either, but regional accents to match the origins of all of these characters. On a side note, it would also be nice to see the OVA get dubbed too, along with Chisei's song from the final episode, which was left in Japanese even in the dub.
You will obviously have heard that Chisei sings that song in Japanese.
Yeah.
Because sadly, we could not acquire the rights to sing the song.
However, that brings up an interesting point. If the series were to get a redub with authentic accents for all the European characters, what accent would Chisei herself have? There's a couple of routes you could go, but that's part of a much bigger conversation about accents and narratives that we don't have time for today.
What's so funny?
Your accent is very unique. It's like a weird jumble of different dialects. Where did you even learn that?
Weird jumble, you say?
Like we said, the current Magus Bride dub is technically fine anyway, but maybe that makes it disappointing that it isn't the best version of itself. Scriptwriter Jamie Markey even reached out to the manga adapter Elizabeth McFarlane to use her work as the basis for the dub script. It's all in all an okay dub, but it could be the groundwork for an amazing dub.
Oh, I just wanna be.
Okay, now we're gonna pull the pin on that grenade. Let me explain. At this point, I feel like I could write a Bible on the long, complicated history of Dragon Ball's English localization. And maybe one day we'll present that Bible to you in video form as the filthy, indoctrinated dub watchers that we are. Instead, I'm going to take a minute to talk about a very specific part of the franchise. Many of the Dragon Ball Z movies possess more than one dub, with some having been done in Canada and other parts of the world.
Please don't misunderstand, Kakarot. I did not come to hug you. The man who beat you is me!
I don't care how many monkeys there are, it's all the same. I'll send you all to the spiritual world.
Let that child alone. Let me alone.
It's about time I was allowed to have some fun. Now I'm gonna teach our visitor a lesson.
No, don't do it! He's too powerful!
But of course, they've also been dubbed in Texas with the established in-house Funimation cast between the early and mid-2000s. While the original series was given a more faithful dub in the form of Kai, these films were never redubbed with similar quality despite constantly being re-released by Funimation. Some would say that it's pointless to redub these films with better acting, since the ideal time to have done so would have been before Battle of Gods, where there was almost a 20-year gap between it and Wrath of the Dragon. However, that's kind of why I think a redub would be interesting to see. And it's not like Toei is above constantly re-releasing Dragon Ball content over and over and over and over. As I was saying, the past 3 Dragon Ball films have honestly possessed some of the best English acting and writing for some of its key characters. Granted, the dubs for those older films do get better with each passing one as the Funimation cast got more accustomed to their characters. In fact, some performances are still bone-chilling to this day. But some of those other earlier performances can still be rough, with a lot of sometimes pointless script add-ons, and even if they're not canon, it'd be great if some of these iconic moments were better handled with a modern-day direction.
Is that what you've done with your free will, boy? Don't you lecture me with your $30 haircut. Goku dies!
Besides, many of the American dubs also had their scores replaced, with some films actually featuring American songs as needle drops, and they're just great. You do have the option of watching the English dub with the Japanese score on most official releases as well, but I do think there's a lot to be capitalized on here that can get Dragon Ball fans excited, and maybe distract them long enough from asking when the hell Super is coming back on air. I mean, since we're already in the realm of wishful thinking, it'd be cool to see the Vancouver cast return to dub the rest of the movies too. A lot of people forget that there was this weird period of time when the first 3 movies were actually released with the Canadian cast for Dragon Ball Z before they got replaced, but after Saban left the franchise. And despite some added sound effects and censored shots, the Canadian dub for those films are great even by today's standards. You can even put them out with the upscaled footage that Toei released a few years back. I mean, aside from that, Toei has really shown no interest in revisiting any of these films, and let's face it, they're probably just going to repackage their contents in new installments anyway, but you can't deny that that idea is at least a little enticing.
Time to go home, load up that bong, and watch Pokemon!
Yes, this is Ghost Stories, and I'm only half joking about it, to be honest. Most people know at least part of the story.
Shikata's banging the living fuck out of Matsushima.
Basically, this is a mystery anime aimed at kids, but the English dub goes almost entirely off script with raunchy and offensive humor, completely changing the appeal.
Where's your sister, Ketcheril? Well, one thing's for sure, she's not getting the living fuck banged out of her by Mr. Staccato. What?
It's been often repeated over the years that the Japanese side gave the dub team permission to do whatever they wanted, as long as it could make the show more successful than its apparently dismal performance in Japan. However, we've already made a video with the help of some outside sources, pointing to evidence that Ghost Stories was actually received quite well in Japan.
Nani? So you don't care if all of us get killed? You filthy furry spawn of Satan, goddamn you to hell!
Granted, we made a few blunders with the specifics in that video, but while there are some signs that point to a downturn in its performance on Japanese TV, arguably the same could be said for anime on primetime in general. A Ghost Stories fan club in Japan has a theory that the anime was treated as filler between Kodansha's slot and Shueisha's slot, which could be supported by a few things, links in the description. And to get this out of the way, yeah, I do enjoy the Ghost Stories dub. The reasons for dubbing it like this may not hold water, but fun is fun at the end of the day. Though, yeah, I'd completely understand if others didn't get the same kick out of it, for various reasons.
Well, we could be here a while. How about a little menage a trois?
How about you say one more thing so disgusting it makes me want to vomit?
Again, this video is not based on practicality, so I highly doubt this will ever happen. However, if there ever was a way to definitively put this whole misunderstanding of Ghost Stories in the past, a normal uncut redub would be a way to do that. I've seen it argued on Reddit somewhere that the most likely incentive to dub Ghost Stories like this was because a proper dub of a yokai comedy would, at least at the time, have such a limited appeal in the West and wouldn't make much money back anyway. Obviously, things are different nowadays. Anime has such a fast and wide global reach through subtitled simulcasts, and even if a show isn't one of the most popular things of the season, it probably will have a notable English-speaking fanbase.
Ever since Lost, the Nets will take anything with a supernatural bent to it.
It wouldn't make much sense to give the Ghost Stories treatment to a recent yokai mystery comedy like the Kitaro remake or Toilet-Bound Hanako-kun.
He was attacked by Hanako the bathroom ghost.
Besides, this is 2020, the 20th anniversary of Ghost Stories itself. It's not uncommon for anime to get reboots or continuations to celebrate big milestones like this, so what would have happened if they did that for Ghost Stories? The English-speaking part of the world would have been the only one out of the loop with that. And yeah, I know there is an Animax English dub with a much more accurate script, but as you'd expect with Animax dubs, the acting quality really isn't up to snuff. Funimation's Crayon Shin-chan dub went a similar route to Ghost Stories, but it's pretty much impossible to convince folks that that IP was poorly received and worth turning into a gag dub, because it's gotten multiple anime continuations to this day, unlike Ghost Stories. Actually, maybe Shin-chan is more in order for a proper redub, but I haven't seen that show yet, so you're stuck with this. Sorry.
What would Hillary Clinton say?
The Ghost Stories dub was directed by Stephen Foster, who's probably one of the more infamous names associated with ADV and Sentai Filmworks. I've definitely enjoyed some of his dubs, but I've also seen a lot of anime fans online who hate almost anything he brought to the table. His dubs were known for off-color humor, ad-libbing, and random Western cultural references.
So she lives here with a friend of hers, isn't that right? Who is she? Sarah fucking Palin?
Not all his work goes that far all the time, of course, but it has seen stuff including this random Oprah reference from The World God Only Knows.
This way, she can live her own life like Oprah wants her to.
And a background character at a wedding in Clannad saying they're gonna shoot themselves. And some people were content with the fact that Foster more or less left the dubbing industry.
I'd like to thank my agent, my manager, Stephen Foster, for writing such a gay-friendly but still mainstream script that spoke.
Speaking of Stephen Foster, the man himself actually left a pretty lengthy comment on our video about the Ghost Stories dub. He liked the video overall, but wanted to disclaim that he was the director ADV would always turn to specifically to make things more accessible to Western viewers, and that he was basically their fall guy, willing to take the blame for any and all dodgy stuff in their dubs while he was there, maybe even if he wasn't actually responsible for it. A term he coins for his dubs is fosterized, while plugging his book, which apparently explains his full story. Admittedly, I haven't read it yet, so I couldn't tell you my thoughts on his account. Maybe one day we'll cover the book on this channel. Sorry, Stephen.
But for all his flaws, I really did love the guy. And the hot, sweaty, wall-slamming sex we used to have, wow!
When it comes to Ghost Stories' failure on Japanese TV not being entirely true, he claimed the whole "the anime studio wanted to reclaim some of the lost money so they let ADV do anything" narrative was all that he was told. So whoever authorized Ghost Stories' dub to be handled like this was someone above even him? I don't know. Regardless, he's still glad with how it turned out, how much fun he had with it, and he'd do it all over again if he had the chance. Like I said, I did enjoy Ghost Stories, but not because it's masterful or unique comedic writing. If anything, the constant one-liners and tonally deaf jokes kinda undermine any serious sense of continuity the show could have had. which is maybe why it's been able to succeed so well here on YouTube in the form of clip compilations rather than full episodes. Steven said he began by tweaking the translations themselves, but by episode 4 the dub was basically made up on the spot, and even he admits in his comment that it had a hopscotching feel to it. People often bring up Ghost Stories as an example of how irreverent comedy dubbing can enhance an anime, but honestly I think a better example would be Boba Bobo Bobobo. That show's dub was also mostly comedic liberties, but the original story was inherently absurd, so it still retains the feeling of the Japanese in a roundabout way. I mean, maybe they could make a more clever and precise dub of Bobobo, but until they do, I have a hard time disliking this one.
Some may say it's a good change, others may say it's a bad change.
At this stage, a normal Ghost Stories dub would only really appeal to the older enthusiast fans, even if it would be another good chance to prove how far the Western market has come, showing people that yes, this anime could have been dubbed normally all along. Personally, I'm fine with Ghost Stories being this infamous dub, as long as the truth about its Japanese legacy isn't covered up.
Our president is an idiot and a liar. God bless America, land of free speech.
Okay, I promise this is the last time I'm going to talk about questionable Dragon Ball content. At least for today, so just bear with me. I'm not going to get into which installment did a better job of carrying the torch of the original series because honestly, I can only stir up so much controversy per video. But the existence of Dragon Ball Super has left Dragon Ball GT in a very weird place. Does the show have any merit worth preserving with a redub? Its relevancy and canonicity was already brought into question during its airing, with various aspects about the show not aging particularly well with fans, as the series tried desperately to recapture the magic of the franchise's previous installments. Not only was that obviously not successful, but that hesitancy was even carried over into how the show was marketed here in the West. The initial English adaptation of Dragon Ball GT, or Dragon Ball Grand Tour, ran on Cartoon Network between late 2003 and 2005, carrying on shortly after the Dragon Ball Z dub had finished. That initial airing had actually shortened the first arc of the series, potentially to prevent viewers from being off-put by the space adventure tone of the first couple of episodes, and as was the case with Z, the entire musical score was replaced, this time with one composed by Mark Menza, which, keeping consistent with the rest of the series, also hasn't aged particularly well. This even included the opening, which went from this gentle, upbeat melody to, well, this.
Take the Grand Tour, GT! Step into the Grand Tour, Step into the Grand Tour, Dragon Ball GT! Step into the Grand Tour, Dragon Ball GT!
Ah yes, you can just feel the mid-2000s. Thankfully, in 2008, Funimation released the series as 2 remastered box sets where the original Japanese music was restored and English versions of the opening and all 4 ending songs were created. GT's dub could be considered a step up from the Z dub. However, there are a few performances that really don't hold up, and the scripting during other episodes still took some very questionable, unnecessary turns. One minute the show is pretty faithful, adapting what's going on, then the next minute you have Goku giving the embodiment of evil a lecture on what it means to be a good person.
You see, when you take life, you live in fear because deep down you know that someday your life will be taken as well. We all have to reap what we sow, Omega. There's no way of avoiding that. When you harm others, you're really only harming yourself.
If this show had the Kai treatment, striking a balance between the nostalgic old dub with a direction that was more loyal to the source material, I think even the more hardcore GT detractors would at least be curious. For example, I would love to see Elise Bowman come back and handle Pan better than how she was written back then. It would also be nice to see some new experimental casting take place for some of the more unique characters who had to be double cast at the time. Or again, maybe even get the Canadian actors in on the fun like what was done with Brian Drummond in Super. And if you want my controversial take of the day, I think it'd be the perfect opportunity to cast Barbara Goodson as Kid Goku. She was originally Goku, or rather Zero's voice actor, during one of the first dubs for the franchise by Harmony Gold decades ago, and while short-lived, I feel like that was one of the best English incarnations of that version of the character that we never got to hear more of.
You know, I fought much bigger monsters than you. Prepare to meet thy doom!
I know Funimation would most likely go with Colleen Clinkenbeard, who is the current English voice for Kid Goku, but that's just my secret hope, even if it falls on deaf ears. Similar to the Dragon Ball movies and specials, I can understand that it makes little sense to go back and redub a sequel with such a shaky history. Yeah, we technically redubbed Z, but that's because Kai was treated as its own separate thing. And, for better or worse, Dragon Ball Super has effectively replaced its existence. If GT were to come back in any capacity, it would probably be either a reboot or, again, Toriyama just repurposing those earlier botched ideas into another installment. However, with all the crazy turns this franchise has taken in the past couple of decades, you really get the sense that anything is possible.
We stand as a serious threat to history right now.
A ship that travels through time? And you expect me to believe a story like that?
Prepare to salute the commanding officer!
Don't worry, Gintama, we'll get to you another day. One thing I'd like to do with this video series is occasionally highlight shows and dubs that people don't really talk about that much. Which brings us to Zipang, the story of a modern Japanese battleship getting sent back in time to World War II. This show was recommended for a redub by one of our patrons, Xavier Gordon, and much like Build Fighters in the last video, Zipang is the obligatory Singapore tier dub we talk about. Although honestly, this one is better compared to last time. Licensed by Genion and produced by Odex, it was directed by Paul Pistor, who apparently was a puppeteer on Alien Resurrection and Men in Black 2. So that's interesting. The script itself seems very accurate and doesn't change much from what's found in the subtitles.
Well, if you ask my opinion, that's good news.
But boy oh boy, where do we start with the acting?
Listen to me. I thought we were all supposed to be on the same side here.
I mean, I guess, to its credit, not every performance is equally bad. The protagonist, Kadomatsu, is probably the best. You know, considering he got recast for the final 3 episodes for some unknown reason. Other than that, performances are usually incredibly flat or incredibly forced.
It's not a dream.
Huh?
I know it's not a dream. Because I'm bleeding. Look here.
Ah! Holy crap, you've been hit!
And while the script generally sticks close to the original, that also gets in the way of the acting from time to time.
You were always so level-headed and practical, and you served the Imperial Navy with integrity and total devotion.
Like we said in our video on the Beastars dub, conservative ADR script writing is a safe way to keep the show's meaning intact, but sometimes small rewrites are absolutely necessary, or else you end up with awkward pauses like this.
Just as I thought. It really was the Yamato.
You think he sounds a little stiff?
Despite his attitude, he's human too.
And maybe you've noticed by now, there's some weird accent shenanigans going on here too.
Hey there, I'm Mirai Navigator, Lieutenant Commander Kohei Aguri.
Most of the characters the show focuses on are Japanese. However, some, but not all, will have these southern drawls.
You know, Chief, I was wondering, when the heck was the Battle of Midway?
Yeah, I think it was June 5th, 1942.
What's it all mean anyway?
Sometimes dubs will give Japanese characters these accents as equivalents to a specific dialect from Japan, like Osaka-ben. So maybe that's what's going on here? Personally, it felt pretty weird in Zipang specifically. Maybe because this is a show all about Japan's place in a global war that actually did happen in real life. Again, over the years, the general American accent has been perceived as quote-unquote neutral in dubs, which is why most Japanese characters use it, while other sounds from the US are inevitably less neutral.
Protecting our country's what it's all about, boys.
Which is why some of us might criticize it even when it's technically warranted. Please let me know in the comments if I'm missing something, like if it's a regional thing. What's weird is that on top of those accents for Japanese characters, the show actually features the US military, and they sound like so.
Hey fellas, look, it's a Japanese soldier.
Looks like something from Halloween.
You're a monster from a fairy tale.
I saw a Japanese in San Francisco once. He was small and looked like a monkey. Yeah, I can't wait.
We're ready.
Let's go get him.
I say we go kick some ass!
Semper Fi Marine! Semper Fi! U.S. Marine Corps! U.S. Marine Corps! U.S. Marine Corps! U.S. Marine Corps!
Interestingly enough, there actually is a part of the story that takes place in Singapore, and Kusaka has a kind of Asian accent himself.
Someone like you will not stand by idly and watch while those men go to meet their deaths. Because you're not a god, but a human, and most importantly, you're Japanese!
Again, all these characters are Japanese. However, as far as I can remember, none of the other Imperial soldiers had that accent. In fact, some of them had faux British accents.
We're only 6 months into the occupation, and there's rumors of a black market shortage already.
Chief Kuroshima, are you trying to tell me that you believe these ridiculous stories?
Even the Germans, with their advanced technology, couldn't build a plane like the one we saw. The biggest problem we have at the moment is that we can't keep that man a secret.
Do you guys like these accents? To me personally, it wasn't consistent enough, and just raised more questions. That's not even mentioning how everyone botches the pronunciation for these Japanese warship names like Yamato and Nagato.
First we see the Yamato, now a Nagato?
Like I said, I didn't think this dub was as bad as Build Fighters, especially Tries. However, if the series were to be re-released in the West, it deserves something better than this. The anime was directed by Kazuhiro Furuhashi, who's also responsible for Rurouni Kenshin, the first Hunter x Hunter anime, and Gundam Unicorn. But for now, much like the Mirai itself, this dub is unfortunately stuck in the past. Thank you so much to everyone who watched till the end. Once again, updates and corrections to what we mentioned in this video can be found in the pinned comments down below. Please let us know whether you agree with our picks on what anime should be redubbed, as well as any suggestions for the next one of these videos we do. We'll do our best to consider some of those requests, so if you'd like to see that happen, be sure to share the video around. If you'd like to help us out another way, feel free to visit our Patreon page. A big thank you to the generous people already supporting us, including Reagan Senpai, Ahoba, JR Pictures, Marissa Lenti, Spartacus, Queen Era 2, Seth Phillips, Tristan Gallant, Unknown Secret 1000, and Xavier Gordon. This has been the Cartoon Cipher, and, well, this'll probably be our last video for the year. So, happy holidays, and we'll see you all in 2021.